Salut, ça va? Santé?
Coucou, bienvenue from France. Welcome back to the show where we talk about life, different perspectives, and a petit peu du français, usually with a glass of wine or a spritz. Well, I'm excited to be back today. I just got back from 3 weeks in the US, and our topic today, because I feel like this is important after kind of seeing the US with new eyes after living in Aix-en-Provence for the past 3 years, I thought our topic today might be interesting to say what America seems like when you live in France. At first, I wanted to kind of start with a funny story. So, I got to the US, and there are a few things I definitely miss so much from the US. One of them is really random. It's everything bagel seasoning. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. It's like usually on avocado toast. You can get it at Trader Joe's, but I think they sell it a lot of places now. Anyways, our first stop was my father-in-law's house in Tennessee, and he had this in his cupboard. And when we were leaving to go to Chicago to see my family, I said, "Is it okay?" His name is Charlie. "If I take this with me? I haven't had a chance to go to Trader Joe's. I really want to bring this back to France." And he was like, "Of course, take it." So I check my luggage, which I don't normally check luggage, but it was a 3-week trip, and there was a lot of things from the US I wanted to bring back. So I check my luggage and get my luggage in Chicago when we arrive. And I open up my suitcase, and this is not a joke. I don't know why I didn't wrap this. The everything bagel seasoning is everywhere, like all over my clothes. It is basically exploded in my suitcase. And for those of you who don't know what this is, it's like a combination of like sesame seeds, garlic, like it has like an intense smell and flavor. And so all of my clothes basically smelled like garlic. I didn't have an ability right away to do like any kind of laundry because we were in a hotel for a few days. Anyways, long story short, do not bring back something that is likely to explode, has a strong odor, and is kind of unnecessary. Like, I ended up really now hating the smell of that everything bagel seasoning for literally the rest of my trip in the US and couldn't even order avocado toast anymore with that on it because just the thought of it was like so disgusting. So, anyways, just a small story of just like think about what you bring back before you decide this is everything I need, like, and it's 100% essential when you live abroad. Okay, so coming to our topic today. So we were in the US, and I suddenly had like new eyes of what the US seems like. So let me just tell you, like, we got off the plane. We had a really long trip. We went from Marseille, we flew through Amsterdam, then to Atlanta, and then Atlanta to my husband's house near a small city called Knoxville, Tennessee. So all of that trip, we got basically stuck on the plane in Amsterdam for 3 hours. There was a medical emergency. We couldn't take off. They had to bring the plane back to the gate. My kids were so good. My daughter, who's now 7, was sitting on the plane and she just watched movies. And all of a sudden, 3 hours in, she's like, "It's so funny, mommy. It doesn't even feel like we're moving." And I'm like, "It's because we haven't even taken off yet." So that's kind of a horrifying feeling as a parent, knowing you then have 9 hours after that. So that whole trip became like over 20 hours to get to the US. And when we got there, it was like, you're just suddenly inundated with so many things. Like, you haven't slept. Like, I wish I could show you guys the picture. I'm like in glasses, like mascara stained everywhere. We have so many suitcases. The kids are like half awake. And you like get there to the airport, and all of a sudden it's just like you're like hit with like a heavy dose of American people, like all kind of carrying like large, like iced macchiatos of some sort, which again, living abroad is like really bizarre to see because you just can't find like iced drinks in general. There are some, but not like to the degree of like I'm talking about ginormous. And then everyone's like it seems like Viore and Aloe is just like taken over as athleisure brands. And there's just a specific kind of noise. Like, it's hard to explain, but it's like really loud, but there's like an ease to it. And people seem like kind of like jovial and happy. And then we get off the airplane, and of course, like, my father-in-law picks us up, and it's just always this like emotional experience of how much people age since you've last seen them. And, he struggled to find the gate, and then he picked us up, and he just looked older, and like you give him a hug and you kind of feel this like guilt set in that's like all too familiar for me, where you live far away and you don't see people, and then you wish you could see them more often. And then when you do see them, you get sad because you realize that they have aged, and you also realize how big like your own children have gotten. And you only realize that when someone comments or they stand up next to the grandparent and they're suddenly like kind of getting close to the size of the grandparent. And I don't know if you guys feel this way with your kids, but you don't notice it every day. Like we see our children every day if we're fortunate. And they just like grow tiny, tiny bits every day. But you only notice at moments when like suddenly their pants don't fit or their sleeves get too short. But it's not like it hits you all of a sudden like it does when you haven't seen someone in 6 months. And suddenly it's so interesting to me. Your kids are getting bigger, like longer, and your parents are like shrinking. And it's like this dichotomy of two worlds that it would only be jarring because we only do it every 6 months. And it's just interesting. And it kind of makes me a little sad, to be honest. But I think it kind of helped me also see my own culture in a different way. So I'm going to tell you about what I was observing, and I think hopefully you guys will find this interesting. So after we saw my in-laws, we then went to my parents who live in a lake house just north of Milwaukee. So it's about an hour and a half from Chicago. And we went up with my siblings and their kids. So it's like all this big gathering for the 4th of July. And it was the 250th year anniversary of the start of the United States. And so it's just like this kind of like so many emotions, right? There's like chaos because there's a million children like under the age of 7. There's like this like anxiety that kind of fills the whole weekend. And so it's like your time together, it's like feels so soul quenching on one standpoint of like, oh, it's so nice to see everyone. And then it's like just freaking exhausting on the other hand. And it's just this like complete shock to go from, I would say we have a pretty like tranquil life like in Provence. Like we try to like really be present, like take time to slow down, to really teach our kids like how to sit down and like have a meal as a family and to not rush everywhere. And so when you get to America, it's like everything is just lived like so much more out loud. And I think after 3 years of kind of trying to slow down, trying to be more present, when I get to the US, it's like I'm handed this like new pair of eyes and a little bit of distance, and I can see this so much more clearly now. It's almost like I'm like this anthropologist now that gets to study the place I'm from and observe like that it's not just a part of life, because that's how I used to think of it. But as an observer, like I was trying to kind of stay unbiased, like not judgmental, just more like, okay, observe my own culture, but observe the adopted culture I also have in France. And I realized that, like, for most Americans, it's like pretty normal to just have all of these like norms and beliefs, and there's so much underneath it, but it just becomes part of everyday life. And I think one of the things that really struck me when I went to the US is everything is like this mentality of on to the next. And that means like, what are we doing next? Like, no one's like in a moment. Like, there was a few observations I had of this. So, as you guys know, in France, they're very, at a restaurant, like very, I would say, like cognizant of letting you finish your meal. They'll never bring the bill. Here, like I was literally like at a restaurant near my parents' house, and I was like I maybe had like half a plate of food left, and I'm like taking bites, and the waiter just like puts the bill down right next to my like plate. And I don't think he was trying to be rude. I realized like the mentality in the US is like they're just trying to help you maximize your time, because you shouldn't in the US spend too long on any one thing. I think a lot of goals, like even if it's an enjoyment thing, is to do as much as you can and put and cram as many things as you can into a single day. So it's like even if the goal is enjoyment, it's a Saturday, it's like a holiday weekend, It means scheduling. Like, I noticed this with a lot of friends that were living in the US, and they're like, okay, it's Saturday. I'm going to work out in the morning. Then let's have brunch. Then maybe let's do the beach or the pool. Then we should have dinner drinks here. And then maybe let's have dinner here. Oh, and then there's this awesome concert or this after dinner, like, bar we should go to, etc. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, that's like a lot to do in one day. And I feel like I have learned to appreciate downtime, but it's like a very foreign concept in the US. Like, for example, I, on one of the podcast episodes, talked about the art of doing nothing. And it's honestly something I've come to genuinely love about France. Like, if you observe the culture and you can be in moments where you are not on your phone, you're not reading, you're not doing anything except just being present in like what's around you and observing. I love the term in French. It's the art of doing nothing. And so my dad listened to one of our podcast episodes where I talked about this art of doing nothing. And he literally said to me, he's like, I listened to all your episodes, but I really didn't understand that one about the art of doing nothing. He said, it just seems like a complete waste of time when there's so many other things you could be doing. And I kind of smiled and I just said, okay, thanks, Dad. But like something in me, that sentence like stayed with me my whole time I was in the US because I realized that like not only should you be trying to do as much as you can in one day, there also isn't really time in between activities. Like that's not highly valued. Like things get scheduled so tightly back to back and you're meant to like squeeze the most out of every hour. And I feel like this creates this sort of like self-induced stress. You're rushing from like one thing to the next, rushing to be on time for this. You're rushing from your previous activity. And I felt this so much at the lake house. So, like, for example, my dad, trying to be helpful, like, booked an early dinner reservation for the entire family. This is like now up to like 17 people, including kids. And we had to be there at 5 p.m. sharp because, like, my siblings have little ones. And I know in different parts of the world, it's quite interesting, especially in Europe. Like kids, especially in the summer, are not on a schedule. Like it's sort of like go to bed when they want to go to bed and wake up when they want to go to like wake up. And that is not the case in the US. Like they still, every American parent, I feel like most American parents still try to maintain some sort of schedule and theirs are like sacred and they're pretty rigid. Like there's no napping on the go if you can avoid it. Try to avoid like late bedtime. And adults in the US, like I used to do, build their entire evening around the child's schedule. So if you want a dinner out with kids, like you're booking it for 5 p.m. And so the kids are like having a great time in the lake. Like they're splashing, they're jumping off the pier, they're like shooting water guns and throwing like, water balloons. And we have to like as parents get the kids out of the lake and no child wants to do that at that point because they now have to shower, get dressed, sit in the car seat, sit at a restaurant, and it's just not fun for them. But we are like, okay, how do we also do something enjoyable as parents? And then when we get to the restaurant after like all this like rushing around trying to get everyone ready, the kids are like handed iPads or phones because no parent wants the discomfort of them being bored and them to be like whining to us when we're trying to enjoy our like one early dinner that we get to have. And so I just found that really culturally interesting because having lived here now, it's just not like that. Like the kids are expected to sit at dinner. They eat dinner at the time when the parents want to eat dinner. And yes, there's meltdowns and things like that, but I think kids just get used to it, but they don't get used to it if they're never exposed to it. And so I just was observing that of my own culture. And I think it's okay. I think I can see both sides. I see the like nice part about having a schedule and the kids are probably like, more well rested the next day. But I also see the European way of like not stressing and not like worrying so much about the schedule. And I think there's value in that too. Okay, my second big observation, noise. This is like a big deal that I have come to realize is so unique, I think, to American culture and maybe other cultures. Like I know Italians are loud, just the French are very quiet. And there's not like a lot happening all at once. In the US, that's totally different. Like going out to a restaurant is like its own sensory event. There are TVs mounted everywhere. Like the sound is on normally and it's blaring. And if the sound isn't on the TV, then loud music is like filling the space. So if you walk into an American restaurant, you literally have to talk over all of this. Like you are going to be hit the minute you walk in with just the sheer volume, voices, plates clinking, there's like screens flickering, people like getting up and down. It's just like very overwhelming. And I think the only way you adapt is like you just have to start talking louder and be part of the action, or you're just going to be annoyed the entire time. And then the other thing I observed when we're at these restaurants is like there are calorie counts now next to almost every single menu item. And most are around like 1,000 plus calories, which in the US, people are, I would say, like very rigid or at least trying to be somewhat rigid about like people should have 2,000 calories a day. And that's like half your meal. I mean, half your calories worth in just one meal. And I'm like stunned by this now because I just honestly have not looked at a single calorie count since we've moved to France. So in 3 years, I don't read labels at the grocery store. I never like turn around like a yogurt or anything I buy and like look at the calories. In fact, I don't even totally understand them here. They're like kcal, which is like, I think the same as calories, but I honestly just don't even look at them. No restaurant in France or in Europe would ever list calories next to it. It's like food isn't discussed in a way that's like perceived as negative or meant to be tracked. It's like people just eat intuitively, like not too much, not too little, but just like enough. And it's meant to be enjoyable. Like it's meant to provide like value to your body, to listen to your body. It's not meant to obsess over. It's not like this constant burden. It's just meant to be part of living, not like some daily stress. And I was just shocked here because so much of American stress comes from the fact that food is literally woven into every hour of every day. So if you're going for a walk in the US, pack snacks. We were going for a ride on the boat. It was like, who has all the snacks? And so you're just like sitting on the boat. It's like in between meals. There's no reason to snack. Everyone's had a decent enough like lunch and a dinner's not that far away. But it's like pretzels, skinny pop, popcorn, like anything that is going to kind of like, I would say, occupy a moment or stop a meltdown, or I don't know, they're just like part of the culture. And so, anyways, I was realizing that this food culture is just, it was stressful because the calories on the menus, snacking is part of like every hour. And then when you go back, like, I'm just going to take you back to the restaurant scene for a minute. Finally, like, okay, after you've gotten over the noise, the calories on the menu, you've ordered, you got your meal, and the portions are enormous. Like, I know this, like, because I lived in the US my entire life, but they just seem to have gotten like bigger and bigger. Or maybe my mindset is that like I now know what a normal portion size is living in France, but it's like the prices are considerably higher. And so the meals seem to have to grow to match because America's mindset is like you have to get your money's worth. And to me, like a single entree looks like it could feed a family of four. And so then what happens is like the leftovers pile up, or at least they should, because like I personally feel like no one person could possibly or should possibly eat that much at like one meal. And so every restaurant has takeout boxes, even at nice restaurants, like which means that's just part of the culture. So you always take your food to go home. Then I've witnessed this so many times. The food gets shoved like somewhere in the back of the fridge, sits for a few days, nobody eats it, and then it's thrown out. And it kind of makes me sad. Like I just saw like so much waste in the US with food, and I just don't see that here. And we personally like don't do that. We never have takeout food. Like we cook for that day, like just enough. If there are leftovers, we would eat them the next day for lunch. And I realize like why that is. It's like cooking in many American cities has like honestly become kind of a lost art. I would say most families are American families are too busy, stretched too thin to have time to cook. And so even if a meal is made at home, which I also observed, which I found just shocking, like Americans would reach my family, my in-laws, like paper plates and plastic forks, things that you can just toss and throw away instead of rinsing and loading into a dishwasher. which I was just sort of horrified by. And then I went grocery shopping in the US and I found that like the paper and plastic aisle was also a shock. Like it's just huge. There's like every kind of flatware and size and plate, and it comes in like every sort of texture, like paper, plastic, whatever you need. And it's meant to just sort of cater to Americans that appreciate convenience and that need just the quick, fast turnaround of things instead of, I'll just contrast this to Europe, like everything is glass or metal. Like it's really rare to get plastic. Even if you get takeout, it's wood. Like it's wood, I would say like wood cutlery. And it was just kind of shocking to me, like, because here, like even we were at a beach club the other day in the south of France, like by our house, and I ordered an Aperol Spritz. You guys know it's my go-to. And it came in like a real glass. We're on the beach. They had to set it on like a wobbly table. The risk of breaking, I'm sure, was high. But it just like, I kind of take it for granted. And this time I really noticed it when I got back because I'm like, huh, it just feels a little more special, I would say, to have real glass and to have eat meals on like a glass plate. And I just noticed like when I'm eating a meal in the US and it's on a plastic or paper plate, like it just feels a little less special. So that was another thing I noticed. And I don't mean for these to be negative. I think I just would have taken them for granted 3 years ago. And now my eyes were just kind of more open to them. But they were also open, I would say, to so many good things that I had forgotten about the US that I really, really miss. There's just this like openness and warmth about American culture that I had forgotten. Like, I think French people, and I'm trying not to generalize, but I would say they are more reserved. Like, they're not going to smile at you the minute you like walk past them on a street. They're not going to like immediately open up about their life. They're not going to like go out of their way to be like super helpful. And I noticed the complete opposite in the US. So I was in downtown Chicago and this older gentleman literally went completely out of his way. Like, so I'm carrying like two to go coffees, which again, very American. I was so excited to have iced lattes, brought one for myself and my husband. And then you guys will laugh, but I also was going to pick up like pancakes for the kids to go because we were at a hotel and there was like, I didn't want to deal with the whole hotel breakfast sit down meal. And so I'm like carrying these coffees, like trying to open the door. Like I was holding my daughter's hand. And this older gentleman literally like crosses the sidewalk, like goes in front of other people just to like smile and open the door for me. And he said, "Oh, I'm happy to help. It looks like you've got your hands full." And I said, "That's so nice of you." And he was like, "Oh, it's not a big deal. I just saw that you had your hands full and I wanted to be helpful." And I thought that's such a small thing. It maybe took him like 5 seconds total, but like it was so much bigger to me. It was just like this kind of reminder that there's this nice, like unguarded kindness that gets exchanged all the time when you live in the US. And just like little small doses, like, and they don't expect anything in return. This man wasn't like doing it to get something back. And I'm not saying this is everywhere and all the time, but I do think I forgot like how nice it is when a stranger like just goes out of his way to do something really nice for somebody else. And I noticed this also just like in checkout lines, like this would not happen in France. Like I had like two items at the supermarket and a woman in front of me had like an entire cart full. And she was like, "Just go ahead of me. Like, you only have two things. Like, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Like, you just go check out in front of me." And that was so nice because I honestly have stood in a supermarket line so many times in France and nobody would have like let me go if I had like fewer items than somebody in front of me. And so I just thought that was sort of this nice American kindness that honestly like I miss. And I don't even think about it living here anymore until you go back and you kind of forget that there's this sort of just kindness between strangers and willingness to be helpful. So, like I said, none of this is really at all meant to be judgment. And it's not like I'm saying one culture is better than the other. I think you guys who've been listening to me long enough know that I just think, it's an interesting ability like that I've been able to have now, like living here for a long enough time to be able to see my own culture with fresh eyes. And I think what I'm realizing is both cultures are just like different answers to like trying to live a good life. And I think some days, like especially when I'm back in the US, like just feel so American. And then some days when I'm living here, I just love the French way. And I feel like I kind of get the best of both. And what I appreciate about the American culture is like the spirit, the generosity, the like go getter mentality. And what I love about living in France is like the intention, the purpose, the like slowness, the ability to be present in the life you're living. And I think what I'm learning is like, it's really hard. And I've had people tell me this. They get back from Europe and they're back in the US and they try to replicate European life on American soil, and it just doesn't work. And to be honest, like you can't come as an American or as from another culture and come to Europe and expect things to operate with the level of efficiency and effectiveness that you have in the US. And I think if you try to replicate on different soils, like you're only going to end up frustrated. I think instead you just have to appreciate each culture for what they are. And I kind of like being able to sort of be this anthropologist that watches both, love them for who they are, and not what I wish one would be and what the other I think should be and what they could borrow from each other. And I just don't think that's like a healthy attitude. Like I'm much more like, that's good about this. This is good about this. And I think that's like sort of the gift I'm learning to appreciate of when you leave home. And this is for all of you like that have ever left where you grew up. And I don't mean necessarily living abroad. It could just be a different city in the country that you're from. But I think it's not that you learn to like love one place more than the other, but I think you can actually learn to see the place where you came from and the people that are waiting for you and this kind of like tenderness that you can't really appreciate when you're standing inside of it and you're so close to it. And I think that's like one of the, good and bad things. Like I watch my parents like get smaller, like literally in the 6 months every time I land at the airport. And I watch my kids like keep growing in between the visits. And I keep flying back every 6 months into like the noise, but the warmth and the rush. And I'm just honestly so grateful every time that it's like taught me to kind of see it with, I would say, like just a different perspective. And so for all of you that are living somewhere outside of your home country, state, wherever, just like appreciate both and try not to be judgmental of one or the other and try to appreciate that each brings its own goodness. And I think that's a real lesson that I'm trying to just be this anthropologist in your life and look at them unbiased, look at it without judgment. And I think it just helps you see your own life a lot more clearly. And I will leave you with that today. Let me know what you thought. And I would love to. I'm really appreciating you guys that are listening and leaving comments. It really means so much to me. I personally reply to all of them. So I'm just going to read two today that I thought were really interesting. So Shannon wrote me and she listened to the episode, Things the French Find Completely Bizarre. She said, I agree with observing the culture and doing your best to be respectful of the differences between the States and France. The things you mentioned are simple cultural adjustments. Besides, it gives the traveler the full experience of being immersed in a different culture and the ability to fully participate. Beautifully said, Shannon. I completely agree. And I love that. Like, as a traveler, if you guys are traveling abroad or traveling to the US and you live abroad, like, just immerse yourself, get the full experience, participate in the culture. Again, unbiased, not judgmental. Think of yourself as an anthropologist, just observing. Okay, the second comment I'll read today is from Taylor Thomas. She said, and she listened to Daily Life in France. She said, I found this so fascinating and could listen to you talk about your day-to-day routine for hours. Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. I was literally recording that episode thinking, is anyone going to be interested in my daily life in France? Like, is this going to be boring? So Taylor, it's nice to know that you could listen to it and found it fascinating. And she just said, thanks so much. And I just love that because really appreciate everyone listening, everyone leaving their comments. So let me know what else you guys want to hear, and I will talk to you the next time. Thank you. Au revoir. À bientôt.